Hi, my name is Shauna Lampi-Legaree, and this has been the warmest January that I've been in the North for 38 years, and I do not remember a January like this. I mean, it's January, and I'm wearing a little wee coat because it's only minus 10 Celsius out, not minus 45 like it should be. It seems that polar vortex is staying over in Siberia. We're happy for that. This week's video is a color study of Bufflehead ducks. So let's grab our paint tools and let's get going. In this video, I'm doing a color study of a pair of Bufflehead ducks. It was a very quiet day in terms of the light when I was out looking for birds to photograph. It was quite cloudy, which means there was no opportunity to have dramatic light. And the result feels like all the colors are really muted. I got this reference on May 14th, 2021. The challenge that year was winter was holding on for dear life, and finally it was just starting to melt a bit. The edges of the lakes were just getting slushy. The focus in the beginning is to start with the background of the water and snow that is in and around and behind the ducks, slowly building up until the shapes of the Bufflehead ducks show up as negative space. I used a very thin layer of burnt sienna as an underpainting. I don't do an underpainting for my big paintings very often, but I do for all my color studies. It helps me to see the light and the dark values easier. It gives me a comparison to work from. It just works for me. I keep adding layers and layers until I get the background to where I want it to be. I am not in a rush. I'm starting to work on the female and the male by putting the darkest value on. Now there is something to compare with. I have my lightest light and my darkest darks on the board. Building up around the duck, she is very quiet in color, as most female ducks are. She has these sweet white feathers on her cheeks. I use the same brush, a Princeton Dakota flat, through most of this painting. I really like how stiff it is. I can really smoosh it and work it hard, scrub with it to keep the paint thin. Here is the reflection in the water. When I am painting water, I'm looking at all the values in the different interlocking abstract shapes that are present. Now on to the male. He had a very little bit of color on him. Bufflehead males can be quite iridescent if photographed in the correct lighting. I was able to add a small amount of iridescence on his head without it looking out of place with the light that was actually present. The male, like most ducks, has all the drama compared to the female. I love the big white patch on his head and the very white bottom, where she is far more subtle. I get wider lines by using the width of the brush and thinner lines by turning the brush on its edge. There's not a lot of reeds in this area that they were swimming in. Here I begin to get them in place. I continue to use thin layers of paint. I don't particularly like thick paint. I find it hard to manage when I have too much paint on my brush. These abstract shapes, when painted, give the illusion of water. People ask how I paint water. We know that water is clear, but really it is a reflective surface, kind of like a mirror, but with the atmosphere affecting it. This means that the ducks are reflecting on a moving, rippling surface. When doing a color study, I look for colors and values and the interactions of each of the elements. Now, working on the reflections that I am seeing, I keep these purposefully simplified for this color study. The water was fairly calm that day as they paddled back and forth. Actually, the pair was in a ditch. As I mentioned earlier, there had been very little melting happening around the lakes, even though it was May 14th. Head over to my blog to see the photo I took the day after of snow machines racing over the slushy edges of the lake to get on the ice. I have to say, though I'm used to long winters, as I have to be since I live in the subarctic, still it can be very disconcerting to be that cold in the middle of May. As the ducks paddle past, they create some rippling in the water behind them. Focusing in on these small details makes the water seem more real. I changed to a smaller brush to paint these smaller areas. I have done a number of paintings with water, and each one is so different from one to the other. I marvel at the very living nature of water and how diverse it can be from even 1 minute to the next, let alone 1 hour to the next. I do notice that water also reflects in darker values. As the ripples fan out, they may cross paths and creating new and distinct forms. Water is always changing. That variation makes water a very rewarding subject matter to explore with paint. And here we are done. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for subscribing, and we'll see you in the next art video.